expectancy is the breeding ground for miracle. When you expect something to happen, you prepare for it. If you're expecting something to happen, if you're traveling somewhere the next day, you don't not pack your bags. Like, it goes hand in hand, and we're called to walk by faith and not by sight. So when we are actively walking by faith and our actions are aligning with that in a way to where we're believing for something to happen. Maybe it's for finances, maybe it's for more time, maybe it's for to be with your family, maybe it's whatever it is, whatever you're believing for, whatever you've been praying for, your actions should align with it in the same way. If you're believing to have finances, I had a very clear definition of this when I was about 15 or 16 years old, to where we were going through money struggles, and it was very clearly put onto me that I was going to hugely be able to change that. And then later on, probably when I was about 17, it was in the same thing where I was looking for a job. I wasn't necessarily knowing what I was supposed to be doing or what it was going to end up being, but I knew that I needed to prepare for it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how it was all going to play out, but I knew I needed a job. I knew the finances needed to be there for what God was calling me to do. And the rest I didn't know. It was just simply that. So what I did on my side was prepare for it. I was 17 years old. I didn't have a bank account. So that was one of the first things I did. I was like, okay, if I'm going to have this money come in to do what God's calling me to do, I need to actually have a bank account, or if not, I'm hindering him. So as soon as I got that bank account, it was either the same day or the next day. It was like 2 days later, I had gotten somebody reach out to me that was the perfect thing that only God could have done it. Everyone has those scenarios where it's played out so perfectly that not a single person could have made it this possible. Not a single person could have orchestrated it in a way for it to work out how it did. And that's how it was. And I think we can hinder what God can do in our life when we don't align our actions with our faith. We might be saying and we might be praying and believing for something, but if our actions are completely contrary to that, we're going to limit God. We're going to limit what he can do in our lives, because he's not going to do things that are completely opposite of us. He's not going to force things on us, even if we think just because we're praying about it or just because we say we want it. If your faith without works is dead, and if your works do not align with your faith, if your works do not align with what you're praying for, if your works do not align with what God has put on your heart, then you're going to ultimately limit what is allowed to come into your life. And we all don't want that. We don't want to limit what God can do in our life. We don't want to limit the type of possibilities and the purpose that we can have, because we all have these things that are put on us to where we feel like we're being called into this way, or we feel like we're being called into that. And that's an amazing thing. But it also can be hard because you have these things that you feel like you are feeling called into, but you don't know exactly what it is. Or maybe you know the next step, but okay, what's the next 5 steps after that? I'd like a little bit more information about it all. But I think that's an amazing thing, to where when we don't have it all figured out like that, we don't know the next 5 steps ahead, or we don't know the next 10 steps ahead. It's amazing, because that's how we're able to, at that circumstance, trust God instead of trust our own understanding. That's how it's tested in a way of, are we going to lean onto God? Are we going to lean onto his understanding and not our own? Or is that going to be a roadblock to where obviously our faith wasn't big enough? Our faith wasn't big enough to trust him, or to be in an uncertain state, because leading with God and where he's calling us to be, we're not going to be in entirety certainty through every single thing. And I think that is good, because that allows amazing things to happen. That allows what other people would say is impossible to be possible, because with men, nothing is possible. With God, all things are possible. And through Christ, who strengthens us, all things are possible. So if we are truly leaning on that, and if our works align with our faith and what we are believing for, that is where amazing things can happen in our life. That's where, if we're believing for finances, if we're believing for purpose, if we're believing for the ability to be with our family, whatever it is, to travel, if you're feeling called to travel, whatever you're feeling called to do, it's not necessarily going to be easy, because if it was easy, then there wouldn't be that reliance on God. There wouldn't be that reliance on having his understanding and not our own in the scenario, which I think that's an amazing thing to do, coming out of a situation to where you can be like, that wasn't me. If it was me, I wouldn't have been able to get here. I wouldn't have been able to do this. And that is truly incredible. That's incredible, being able to look at a situation like that and know that you could not have done it. It couldn't have been you. You couldn't have been the reason that you did this, or you got through this, or you created this. It had to be something more. It had to be God, because if it was you, you wouldn't have been able to do it. That's an amazing testament to be able to say, coming through a situation, that you trusted in God. You had the faith. You had the works that aligned with the faith, and you walked by faith and not by sight. And that's what you were able to create this, and you did it all by the glory of God and not by your own understanding. That is huge. That is amazing. That is such a thing to all glory to God, give the praise about, and also allows you to continually walk in that and have that faith and have that realization that all of his ways are better than ours. It's going to come to so much more success, so much more fruition than we could ever have imagined of our own.